Hey there, guys! I want to discuss another card from the new D&D Commander Legends Baldur's Gate Electric Boogaloo number 2, whatever it's all called, whatever 7 other names it's going to get in the next few days or whatever. I don't know. But I'm going to want to talk about Navigation Orb. But just before we get into the video for today, if you are enjoying the content that I'm putting out there, please do consider subscribing, turning on that notifications. It really helps us out. But with that being said, let's get right on into the video for today. This is a 3 mana in Artifact. And you can pay 2 to sack it and search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, or gate cards, put one of them onto the battlefield, tapped, and the other into your hand. So it's a colorless artifact that essentially cultivate Kadama's Reach as you. Yeah, sure, you can pay that cost in installments and whatnot, and that is a slight downside that it is 5 mana, but of course anything that is, colorless can go in any deck. Every deck pretty much has got to have some downside, and especially something this good. It's very good, certainly. Is this second Wayfarer's Bauble? To an extent, yes. To another extent, no. Wayfarer's Bauble is so super efficient in the sense of what it does. I expect this card to see a fair amount of play because it's one way for, non-green decks to ramp out lands. And, Burnished Heart sees play. And that does put 2 lands into the field for 6 mana. But, 9 times out of 10, either with non-green decks, either you're hitting all lands, pretty much, or you're hitting no lands. So, that's what I tend to find. So, it's actually, one of those cards that can really help you out when you are behind in mana and whatnot in those decks. And it is very hard to get mana in those decks sometimes, especially lands. So it can really help you out. And, 5 mana is not nothing, but it isn't too much, I think, for this. I think it's a fine effect, especially when if you haven't played your land for turn, or if you've got some ways somehow in non-green to play multiple lands in some regard, like you've got Walking Atlas and a few other cards like that. Not very many, but not none, so certainly. So you could run this with a lot of those other cards in your deck and then take more advantage of a card like this. Plus, it doesn't count your land play for the turn. So, again, if you haven't played a land, you can play that land. It can be really good with cards like Bolas's Citadel and things like that, getting the land off the top of your deck, shuffling, things like that, getting less lands in your deck. Obviously, it's really good in any decks that really care about artifacts and things like that, like Osgear and decks like that, Breya, etc. Just any non-green decks, really, it will be good in, but certainly it'll be much better in decks that care about artifacts and things like that. Though how many, basic lands you're going to run in a 4-color deck, I don't know, but then again, you might be running a fair few, depends. Things like that, but again, it's just one of those cards, and this is where I'm going to have to sort of tighten the screws, I guess, to a degree. That, as I said before, Cultivate Kadama's Reach, they're overrated because, in a sense, there's other better things in those colors, and yes, there are, in a sense, other better things than this to a degree in the colors, or in not the colors, essentially, in the sense, but in another sense, there's no other, besides Wayfarer's Bauble and just running Mana Rocks, there's no real other way, Solemn, but beyond that, there's no real other ways that you can sort of get lands into play like this. And especially something that's so, like, Solemn is pretty abusable. This can be pretty darn abusable as well. And, getting 2 lands is pretty darn good. I think that's the thing that I always think about Solemn is, like, I really either want Solemn to get me 2 lands, or draw me 2 cards. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the thing that all non-green, non-blue decks kind of struggle with is ramp and draw. And those are the 2 things that I would want Solemn to either do, either ramp or lands. I don't want ramp and cards or whatnot, sort of thing. I want one or the other. He's like very generic. He's too generic for what I would want, for the most part. Like, if you're in a sacrifice deck, he's awesome because you're just like, oh well, I'll sack him and I'll get both things right away. For me, where I'm just like, oh, I play him and then he doesn't really do anything, and I'm hoping somebody will either attack me and I'll block with my Solemn, or I'll attack someone stupidly with my Solemn and they'll maybe block it, like, for me to get that card out of it. So, it's not really built into the deck to sort of be sacrificed, because I'm not really planning for that in the rest of the deck. So it's just like, oh, it hangs out there for a long time. Something that's like this, yeah, sure, it costs a little bit more overall, but it gets me 2 lands, which is much more worth it. And it's much more worth it, I think, than Burnished Heart. But having said that, I will say that this will see play, because, like, not certainly in CDH or whatever, in those sorts of decks, because they basically run 2 lands, whatever, and and whatnot, and they're, like OG duels and whatnot. But, like, in, like, the casual side of the format, yes, sure, this will see play, but how much? That's a bigger question to me, because it is a decent card and there isn't much that does this sort of effect. But again, do you actually need this style of effect, and how good is this style of effect when are you going to take this style of effect over another, like, Mana Rock or whatnot? That's where I would, like, question it. It does depend on the deck very heavily, and that's where I'm trying to tighten the screws and get people to be like a little bit like, oh, okay, let's, step back. This is good, but is it that good, or is it that good? Is it better than what maybe, we think? Is it that bad? No, it's not that bad, like, but again, am I going to take out Arcane Signet for this thing or whatnot? Now, maybe I could see you taking out something like Mind Stone, or maybe Command Sphere or something like that for something like this. If you're running those sorts of cards, maybe. Like, Mind Stone's one of those cards. I actually like Mind Stone quite a lot. But it's one of those, like, 9th or 10th mana rocks that you tend to add or whatever. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, especially when you're in 3 colors or 4 colors, it's like, geez, I've got so many options. When you're in 2 colors, yeah, sure, it comes up a lot more, certainly, because it's one of the higher picks when you're only in 2 or 1 colors. Or if you're in colorless, certainly it's very decent there as well. But still, this doesn't work with, like, wastes, so I don't see it, unfortunately, seeing play in any wastes, like, decks or colorless decks, because, you could get 1 basic land, but you can't get the other, or whatnot. Can you? I don't think. Or can you even get wastes with this? I don't think you even can. I don't know. But anyway, gate decks. Would gate decks actually want this? I mean, there's, multiple color gates now, or gates that you can choose another color, and things like that. And there's certainly the old gates, the guild gates and whatnot, that are 2 colors. So, like, budget gates, I don't know, you could be running this. I don't know how relevant that, piece of text is, but if you're in a gates deck, absolutely might be worth it. But then again, you're in 5 colors. So I don't know whether this is the best thing that you could be doing. But then again, like what else searches for gates, and there's like only a certain number of them, and you need as many as possible. So yeah, it certainly is one of those things that might just be in contention just so that you can actually get your gates and get your gate thing going. Well, you actually need the main gate thing, whatever it is, Maze's End or whatever it is, so that you can start tutoring your gates and whatnot. But this is just another way to get more of your gates going more quickly and whatnot. So again, still wouldn't be too bad. But anyway, I think the main purpose of like that is also like fixing. You can be like in limited, be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll get this gate and I get my other gate or whatever. Especially when you're in 2 or 3 colors, whatever. Um, things like that, or if somehow you gotten into 4 or 5 colors somehow. Certainly that's good because again you'll get the gates that you need that are duals essentially that come in tapped or whatnot. And if you time it right, you basically just untap and then upkeep draw blah blah, and so they're all untapped for your turn, so you can start doing stuff. And that's like the good thing about like these cards is that they are like instant speed. But again, it is so tough to like figure this out and say like, well, this is where it will sit or this is where it will sit or whatever. Like it's all speculation based on my knowledge of how the metagame sort of is for the most part. And I think like the metagame is there for a card like this, certainly in certain playgroups. So, and in certain decks. So I would say that it is pretty decent. It's not mind-blowingly good, but this is a common. That's the thing. This is a common. And you've got to take that into an account. And, like this is probably the first Wayfarer's Bauble style variant we've had in what, I don't know, 15 plus years or more or something. And it's a good thing also that Wayfarer's Bauble is also being reprinted in the set because it really helps out those non-green decks that need ramping and things like that. So, Colorless Artifact Cultivate or Kadama's Reach, I think it's pretty decent. It is a bit overcosted to a degree for, like seeing much more higher play in the more like stronger decks. But if you're in a more casual, much more casual, like under, pre-con level or up to pre-con level deck, I would think about it, definitely. But if your deck really needs this style of effect, or it's really based around artifacts and certainly recurring artifacts and things like that, then it goes way up in value because you can just keep getting more and more lands with this and things like that. So that can really help you out, especially if you've got things like Bolas's Citadel, etc. Get rid of those lands on top, which always seems to happen, and things like that. So you can just keep casting spells, and so on and so forth. Especially if it can gain you life with Bolas's Citadel or things like that when you're sacking your artifacts or whatnot. So that would be really useful as well. Then I know there are some synergies that are out there like that. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. That's all I've got to really say on this subject and whatnot. It's an interesting card, and I really like it because I really feel like, now finally, like this is one of those things for that wouldn't have been ever printed in Modern or for Standard and things like that, because it's just like, oh, well, we can't let white or, blah, 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 these colors that aren't meant to, in theory, get these sorts of things, get these things or whatnot. So it's nice that they realize, hey, Commander is the place where these sorts of things, need to sort of fly. So we need to put those cards out there for those players that aren't playing in, 2 or 3 colors that we have a boner for or whatever. So yeah, but yeah, it's certainly decent, and I don't know. I don't think I've got any decks specifically that it would go in. Maybe there's a deck that it would fit into, but I don't think it's fitted around enough this sort of card. So I don't know whether I would consider it, but it's a tough call, certainly. So yeah, you guys can let me know what you think about this card as well. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. I'll be sure to read and respond to all comments. I love interacting with you guys and talking about EDH and all the geeky things that we love. So, yeah, if I don't see you guys down there in those comments, I'll see you in the next one.